This is the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast session number 221. Roger Moore on hypnosis for dementia.
Welcome to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast with Jason Linett, your professional resource for hypnosis training and outstanding business success. Here's your host, Jason Linett.
Get ready for an incredibly inspiring conversation. Hey, it's Jason Linett here and welcoming Roger Moore to the program, and it's about time. Here we go, about 5 years into the program, and I've known of Roger's work for many more years than 5 years, and you're going to hear an amazing conversation here, which includes everything from his journey losing 100 pounds, to the mindset of people always being in trance, to the segment I wanted to spend an hour inside of, which was the week he spent with Virginia Satir, and then bringing it all full circle to an incredible conversation about doing work supporting those people going through Alzheimer's or dementia, and not just them, but also their family members as well. So just some incredible takeaways and some really important thoughts in terms of rethinking how it is we support people, whether it's, the standard, such as weight loss, or working with folks who are going through cancer treatments, as well as, of course, these categories of ongoing memory loss and the work that we can do to actually support along the way. So this is an incredible conversation, which I know is already having me thinking about some of the clients that I've got coming in the coming weeks, and some strategies to begin to share with them and really begin to inspire some incredible change. If you head over to the show notes at worksmarthypnosis.com, of course, I'm going to link over to Roger's websites, as well as specifically to his post-conference offering that's happening this year at HypnoThoughts Live 2019 in Vegas, simply a class called Hypnosis for Dementia, which shares the title of this podcast session too. And while you're online, check out Neurolinguistic Business. This is actually the 2-day post-convention offering that I'm doing right after Roger's class at HypnoThoughts Live 2019. Neurolinguistic Business, the details are online at worksmarthypnosis.com/NLP Biz. This is where we're going to be applying the principles of neurolinguistic programming to not just increase the business flow of our practices and our courses and our product sales, but also you're going to see that how when you heighten the business aspect of what you do, you actually can heighten the results of what you do with people as well. Learn more by heading over to worksmarthypnosis.com/NLP Biz. And with that, let's jump directly into this inspiring conversation. Here we go with episode number 221, Roger Moore on hypnosis for dementia.
It was in the late 1960s, and I was working in a drug crises hotline, all-night crises hotline, often overdoses and suicidal folks. And the phone wasn't ringing. It was about 2 a.m., and I was bored, and laying on the desk was a book about hypnosis, and I started reading it, and I've been hooked ever since.
Yeah. Do you remember what book that was?
I wish I knew. I have no idea. Absolutely no clue. Not a bit.
Do you remember any themes of it? Like what kind of ideas was it presenting?
It was what I remember of it, and I wish I had a clue what it was. It was pretty old school. It talked about, trance depths and somnambulism, and it talked about using pendulums and going deeper and deeper, and I mean that was my initial introduction, and come a long way since then. But it was what I remember of it was really old school.
Yeah, and I love that here you were in a different career path, and there's many people out there who are kind of at that border of here's something they're curious about, here's something they're already doing. What skills would you say came from that previous career and leading into the hypnosis?
Well, that wasn't a career. I was a volunteer there, and I was still in high school, senior in high school. And from there, I went to, first Bethel College in St. Paul and to study social work and ended up at University of Minnesota in the criminal justice department. and left there very cynical. And started working with children and adults with developmental disabilities and running residential and day programs. And then while I was doing that, started my chemical dependency training at St. Mary's Hospital, part of Hazelton and the Vern Johnson Institute. And there I got to spend a week with Virginia Satir.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I had no clue I was at the feet of a master, the feet of God. She was the most beautiful, awesome woman. And that really, even though we didn't talk about hypnosis formally, it just kind of all started clicking for me. And the way that she talked and the way that she related to people and the way she would mix families up and move people around in the room and change positions. It was just her skills were phenomenal, and she was just masterful with it.
Yeah, I got to ask, is there a story of like a specific moment that stands out from what you learned from spending time with her? I
remember there was a family that was in crisis, and Dad was alcoholic, and he was very blaming of the family, and it was all their fault. Mm-hmm. And he had, Virginia had, he and his 7-year-old daughter switch chairs in the room. That's all she did, was switch positions of where they were seated. And it was like night and day. In the change in him, the change in perspective. And that's when he broke down and when progress started being made. And wow. She didn't have him change roles or anything like that. She just interrupted him and asked him to trade places with her. And the whole music changed. It was amazing.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. And are there any specific inspirations that have come from that to the work you do nowadays?
There are. I don't do so much with couples anymore. Mm-hmm. I have a master's in marriage family therapy. When I was doing, heavily into relationship counseling, I would have people sometimes just switch chairs in the middle of the session or in conversations, and not about changing roles, but I would just have them change chairs and watch the dynamics change between the couple. Recently, I had a husband and wife come in. She has a rare form of stage 4 cancer, and she wanted him in the room with her. And he kept interrupting and kept domineering, and I was real close to throwing him out. and I just thought, okay, let's try this. And I said, excuse me, would the two of you change chairs? And they looked at me kind of weird, and he said, seriously? And I said, yeah, please. And he never said a word after that. He let her, I'd ask a question and she was allowed to answer. Whereas up until then, I'd ask her a question, he'd start talking. And that lasted, I let it run about 10 minutes that way into the session, and then that's when I had him change chairs. Mm-hmm. It was like, okay, he's not going to shut up. This is going to continue. So something has to happen here in order for this to be her session, not his.
Yeah.
And then since then, she's been in the room by herself. He's never has asked, never said a word. I don't know what she might have said to him, but he waits in the lobby. Mm-hmm. Excuse me.
That aspect of switching positions, that's something I read about in one of her books early on. And it's where sometimes, and I think most people would understand what I mean by this, you're working with a client and it seems like they're observing the process rather than in the process. And that has been my go-to solution now for years, just to simply say, move to this chair now, or simply stand up. Just that sense of movement interrupts that passive attitude and now brings them fully into the process, without having to scold, without having to kick someone out of the room, perhaps, but in a very organic way. It just automatically
Absolutely.
shifts that
Yes.
perspective. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And when I'm working with kids, they start out in a chair, and if that's not going real well, I sit down on the floor and have them come sit down on the floor with me, and then we're in business.
Yeah. Outstanding, outstanding. So then from there, after spending that time with Virginia Satir, what were those next steps for you in terms of getting things up and running?
Well, I continued working in residential and day programs for a lot of years, and both in Minnesota, and then I was the executive director of the ARC of Maui when we lived on Maui. And what I did there with people that were profoundly severely retarded, that was the terminology back then, with people that with severe autism, often I'd end up, if they were rocking or stimming, I'd often would stand behind them or beside them with just my hands on their back or on their shoulder, or sometimes, maybe if it was appropriate, I'd hold their hand and would talk softly, or sometimes would hum. If they were singing a song or had a song, then I'd sing with them and get them to that place where they could calm down and start creating some comfort, some peace within themselves, stop the stimulation and the self-injurious part of it anyway. Mm-hmm. And I would teach staff how to do this. I never ever talked about hypnosis or anything there, but just about talking softly, slowing the breath, slowing movements with them, leading and pacing. So that was that experience. And then I went on to get my master's in marriage family therapy. And also at about the same time, I actually did my formal certification as a clinical hypnotherapist, because up until then I'd just been reading. And that was with Al Krasner, American Board of Hypnotherapy. And then followed up with Christopher Morrison, who used to be a major in the field years ago. And it was actually in one of Topher's trainings that he asked for a volunteer for a weight loss subject. And I thought, okay, sure, I'll do that. And it was very much with the attitude of, yeah, right, because I don't know if you know who Topher was, but he was kind of like Scott Sandlin when I first met him. Topher was maybe 20, 21 and teaching this class, and I thought, what's this kid know? And at the time I weighed 260 pounds, and I fully believed in hypnosis. I just knew that nothing was going to work for me and my weight. And went up there, sat there, went through it, forgot about it. But I noticed two things. There were times that I would stop eating and have food left on my plate. And there were times that took me longer to eat than it did my wife. I always inhaled my food. And so I set up several more sessions with Topher and lost 120 pounds and have kept it off for almost 26 years now.
Yeah, and I love to bounce around throughout this because I know you've got the book Becoming Slender for Life. You're known for weight loss programs. If you had to kind of rewind back, what would you say that click was for you that kind of brought it full circle to go, yeah, this is happening now?
It was, well, I always talk about that we're always in trance, we're never not.
Yes.
And my whole food trance was food was comfort. There was a fear of being hungry. Oh, I might get hungry, so I better eat now. And I always had to clean my plate, and I always looked for the food that had the most fat, most salt, and most sugar in it. I went from that to being in control of myself and my food choices, and realizing I'm not hungry. I'm depressed, I'm bored, I'm lonely, I'm angry, I am whatever I'm feeling, but this is not about food. I don't need to eat now. And for me, it was that whole sense of I'm in control versus food having control. And so it was me learning how to be in control of me. And
how has that inspired how you help your clients?
I often talk about that, and I wrote about it in my book too. Because I do a lot of work with in the religious community and fundamentalist communities, and often have ministers of a variety of faiths as clients. And there's that whole thing of being, hypnosis and being controlled by the devil, and I just keep pointing out to them, wait a minute. Gluttony is a sin. So which is more sinful? You being in control of you and making healthy choices and treating your body as a temple of God, or letting Satan have control and feeding you Dairy Queen and McDonald's hamburgers? Mm-hmm. And those... The light comes on then of, wait a minute, who is in control here and what am I doing to my body? And so it's just empowering people to make the choices they want for themselves versus what they think they have to make or should make or what they're used to.
Yeah. Outstanding. And I'm curious to ask this at times, because some people get more specific in terms of what actions to take, what things to make use of in the weight loss process. Some are entirely eliciting it from the client. What tends to be your approach for that?
Well, I'm very much whole plant-based food.
Yes.
And I will not work with somebody that wants to do Atkins or keto, or I'm just very upfront about it. Mm-hmm. Most of my clients are not vegan. But they certainly increase the amount of vegetables and whole grains that they're eating and decrease the amount of meat and dairy. And that's, to me, is what's most important, is to stop eating the standard American diet, the foods that's making people fat and sick. And but if somebody, I turned somebody down the other day who was really disappointed. She had heard about me, had a relative had referred her to me, but she was bound and determined that she was going to do keto. And I said, I'm not your guy. I cannot support you in that. And I'm sorry, I won't do that.
Well, I mean, a lot of that comes down to as well, knowing what you work well with, but also I can hear some of the passion behind that statement as to this is what's worked so well for you. This is what so much research now supports. And, when you're with that person, how is that usually handled in terms of, this is the program, this is the plan we're going to be addressing?
I'm not, what do you mean, how's it handled? But
right. Is that part of, let's call it the sales process? Is that part of the conversation in advance?
It's part of, I don't really sell.
Right, yes.
I've never had to sell, and I've actually pretty much basically refused to sell. But I do offer with weight loss generally a 60 to a 90-minute no-charge consultation. It's pretty in-depth with the weight loss. And in that process, I do tell them very clearly what the eating strategy that I will be pushing them to use, and describe it to them that it's whole plant-based foods. And, often I've had more of a problem with people sitting there, will you just hurry up and take my money, without listening?
Yes.
And no, I won't. I want you to buy into this. I don't want to be just one more weight loss failure. You are going to have to show up and do your part, and here's what is expected of you. And so when in doing that, people very clearly hear that their hamburgers and their ice cream and their butter and cheese is not going to be part of their daily fare anymore.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the beauty of just the old statement, there's no change without change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people will often talk about, well, that seems radical. Well, to me, get insulin shots are radical, or having a foot amputated because of diabetes is radical. Having open heart surgery is radical, when most of those diseases are reversible and certainly preventable with dietary changes.
Yeah. Yeah. So then at what point did the hypnosis actually take over at one point in terms of the career path, or what was that transition?
Well, my wife and I in February moved from Bainbridge Island, where we lived for 22 years, to Palm Desert. Big change in lots of ways.
Yes.
And I decided that I was only going to focus on medical hypnosis. And my practice has expanded far beyond just weight loss. Weight loss has become a fairly small piece of my practice now. I mostly am working with cancer and autoimmune disease and dementia and chronic pain. And then being here in California, even though my master's in married family therapy is in California, and I did all my 3,000 hours in California, I'd still have to resit for the test to be an MFT in California. And at this point in my life, it's like, nah, not interested. And so I'm only doing hypnosis now.
Yeah, outstanding. So I'm going to talk about the medical side of things then. Is there a specific approach to that? Is there a specific mindset? That seems to be an area that some would even be afraid of helping.
Well, over the years, I've gotten simpler and simpler in my approach and less gimmicky.
Yes.
I teach people very simple, very easy self-hypnosis skills. I teach them simple, easy stress reduction tools. I teach them simple, easy ways of reducing and dialing back discomfort, increasing comfort. And also really focus more from a neuroplasticity standpoint of memorizing joy and really anchoring joy in their life and feeling that versus, oh my God, I hurt so bad today, or life sucks. And also, no matter how bad things are, that right now in this moment, no matter how much pain they're in, right now in this moment, they're still okay. And when people can find that place of being mindful, and yeah, this hurts, but I'm okay. It's amazing the transformation that occurs in how the comfort level increases, because they're no longer focused on not being okay. They're no longer focused on the discomfort.
Well, I mean, that beautifully connects back to the dialogue about nutrition, that, it begins with, here's the things you're going to enjoy more of. Here's those things that you're going to fill the body up more with, that give your body nourishment. And rather than fill the body up with that signal of pain, instead, here are the signals you could become more aware of and heighten for yourself.
And years ago, I would give people a daily tracking sheet and have them list their symptoms, and would have them rank the level of discomfort on a daily basis for those symptoms. And actually, in large part due to Kelly Woods and Hope Coaching, went, let's change this.
Yeah.
And I still give them a daily tracking sheet, but I now have them track their level of comfort, and each week bring in showing me that their level of comfort, it might have only increased by a half number this week, but they experienced more comfort than they did the week before. And over 3-4 weeks, it's amazing to see those numbers go up, and the smile on people's faces when they come in. And sometimes without those daily tracking sheets, people aren't aware of the changes they've made.
Yeah.
And I hang on to the sheets. So when somebody says, well, I don't think, they hand me their sheets for the week, and they'll sometimes say, I don't feel like I've come very far. And I go, well, really, how, here you're all week long, you've been pretty much at a 6 here, and 3 weeks ago you were at a 2. They go, really? and that helps them shift and really anchor in that, yes, they are improving, they are getting better.
Yeah.
And to just stay focused on wellness. And Herbert Benson and remembered wellness. And remembering a time in their life when they felt healthy, when they felt well.
Well, I mean, so much of that, I'm sure, begins with breaking out of the binary, breaking out of the I'm either in pain or I'm not, I'm either overweight or I'm not, and instead setting things in motion.
Right. And taking the judgment out of it, accepting.
Yeah.
That, okay, I have discomfort. Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
And even that little shift of just the acknowledgement of it existence, mm-hmm. rather than making it wrong and bad, will let the air out of the balloon, will ease that tension.
So you mentioned a few simple self-hypnosis techniques. Like, what's an example of something you'd often share?
Well, I, back a long time ago, learned Jerry Kine's light switch self-hypnosis.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And so I teach a version of that and teach people that, yeah, in 1 minute, you actually can get quite relaxed and also get some, make some changes, focus on being calm and relaxed versus upset and angry. And then when they have the luxury of more time, 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 20 minutes, they can use the same technique. They just don't have to rush back. But they're sitting in the doctor's office and about to go in for an MRI and they're feeling claustrophobic. They have time to do a minute. They might not get a chance to listen to Orange Blossom for 27 minutes, although a lot of MRI places actually have Orange Blossom in their queue. But they can learn to do it very quickly on their own.
Yeah. So you mentioned, I love the statement you said earlier about not having to advertise and purposefully not selling. Where are most of these people finding you nowadays?
Well, I came down here to Palm Desert, and in Seattle I'd gotten very lazy. I hadn't marketed in years. I do a daily blog post, but I just had not done any marketing. I didn't have to. It was all word of mouth referral and just, people find my websites. So come down here and 4 months ago, or February, so I guess, 4 months ago. And I had an office, but I really didn't, I was busy unpacking and settling in. And it was really the late March, early April before I really started putting myself out there and started going to Chamber of Commerce meetings.
Yeah.
I do 2 breakfasts a month one breakfast a month, 2 lunches a month, and then perhaps an after hours if there is one. That has been a huge source of referrals. And then there's a Desert Health, which is a very well done 32-page newspaper in full color here that comes out every other month in the Valley. My first article appeared there on May 1st. I'm working on another one. It's due on the 15th here in a couple days for July 1. And, August 1, I guess it is. May, June. Yeah, July 1. Oh. Anyway, it's been through those contacts and then through the Lucy Kirchie Cancer Center at Eisenhower and the Desert Regional Cancer Center, going in and meeting the support care staff, the oncologists, and that's where the referrals are coming.
Yeah.
And
Which I love that, because just simply getting out there and educating the public is mostly what's doing it for you.
absolutely, yeah, that. And then the other is the Alzheimer's organization.
Yeah.
I really expected I'd be doing a whole lot more footwork, the shoe leather marketing of going door to door. I haven't had to. I'm actually struggling, trying not to work more than I want to right now, which is a nice problem to have.
It's a good problem to have.
It is.
Yeah.
It's and there's that temptation of trying to squeeze people in. Oh, I suppose I could work on Friday or Monday. I only want to work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so I end up scheduling people, for their first session 3 weeks from now, and I never really thought I'd be at that point in a couple months.
Yeah. So chat with me a bit about the support work for people with Alzheimer's, and also I know you work with dementia.
Yes. So, I first started getting involved in working with Alzheimer's. It was about 21 years ago, somewhere in there. On Bainbridge Island, working out in the gym one morning, a man came up to me and said, "Can you help my mother?" And I said, "I don't know what's going on." "Well, she has Alzheimer's, and she's just restless and agitated and freaked out and screams all the time, and can hypnosis help her?" And I looked at him and I says, "I have no idea." And I said, "But you know what? I'm curious. I'd be happy to meet with her and see." And so I ended up scheduling going to her home, and her son, this man had moved in with her, and it was he and a caregiver that they had hired that was there, and the woman, and went in the bedroom, and the two of them there was the four of us in the room, and just started talking to her, and she had no idea who I was, and asked my name about 10 times, and I asked her if I could touch her, and I was sitting next to her bed, and I said, "Would it be okay if I just reached over and laid my hands on your arm?" And she held out her hand, so I ended up putting one hand in her hand and my other hand on her arm, and just started talking real softly to her. And I had also prearranged, in talking to the son, asked him that if I nodded at him, would he start playing her favorite music? And so I nodded at him, and he turned on the tape recorder and started playing some big band songs. And I just talked really softly to her, and you could just see her whole body relax. And she kind of dozed off to sleep. And I kept talking, and then I just sat there silently for a little while the music played, and then I chatted with the son and the caregiver, and I finally left, and 2 days later I got a phone call from the son saying, "It's a miracle." And I said, "What?" And he said, "She has not slept this well. She has not been this peaceful in months. Can you come back?"
Yeah.
And that was my first introduction. I had absolutely no clue. No idea what I was doing other than talking softly and helping her relax. And I saw her several more times in her home, probably 4 times maybe, and she passed, I don't know, about 5 months after I first met her. But that was really what it was all about, was just looking for that relaxation. Mm-hmm. I started doing the research, and it was in 2008. There was this study that appeared out of England with Dr. Dan Nightingale, who's now in Arizona, and he did his doctorate on hypnosis and Alzheimer's and dementia. And I've studied with Dr. Dan. He's actually become a good friend. He and I talk from time to time or text back and forth. So that was my training and experience in working with dementia and Alzheimer's, is then starting once in a while. Sometimes people will come to my office. I've actually met with people online where had a woman in France whose daughter would sit on the bed with the laptop, and I'd talk to the two of them over Adobe Connect. I can only think of maybe one time over the years where I did not have a family member or caregiver in the room with me, because so much of the work is carried on after I leave. Mm-hmm. And it's teaching, the relaxation skills to the caregiver, the family member, whoever's going to be primarily there with them to carry it on, and also to stress the importance of the recordings that I now leave. And leaving recordings that, things like Orange Blossom that people can listen to, throughout the day, or day in and day out type of recordings, to help them get to that place of relaxation. And what's been shown, according to the studies, is that, and then the feedback that I receive, is people do have better memory, are remembering family members better.
Wow. Yeah.
That they're doing better with their ADLs, their daily living skills, with teeth brushing and face washing, those types of things. With eating, eating has improved, and so far no cure. I don't worry about cure. My goal is to make every moment they have left the most comfortable and the best moment it can be.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I love especially the aspect of helping the family members as well, because that's something that is going to be difficult for everybody involved, of course.
Well, that and just often I'm talking with the caregiver or family member in front of the primary client, and engaging the client in the conversation, so we're not just talking about them, but
right, yes.
You're still here in the room and you're still part of us, and we acknowledge that. But that whole concept of remember, I can't remember, mm-hmm. and learning how to be okay with answering the same question 10 times in 10 minutes, or having somebody take 2 bites of their oatmeal and stop eating, and picking up the bowl, and then the caregiver picking up the bowl, leaving the room, coming back in the room with the bowl, setting it down, have them take 2 more bites of oatmeal and stop, and just keep going that process until the bowl of oatmeal is eaten. Because mm-hmm. One of the big problems is nourishing people with dementia, with Alzheimer's, is getting them to eat. And but you take the food out of the room, you come back in, it's the whole new experience, whole new meal.
Right, which unfortunately, yet in some ways fortunately, they don't have those skills yet. They don't have those experiences. So I love that there's the educational aspect that goes along with that.
Right, yeah, because people don't know that. They have no idea. Mm-hmm. And they just get frustrated and start, getting the client more agitated, creating more stress over, you got to eat.
Yeah. And curious about the actual work inside of that. When you mentioned a recording, what does that typically consist of?
Well, I don't know if I've mentioned Orange Blossom several times. Orange Blossom is a free 27-minute recording that actually originated from Robert Otto. And I'd learned it originally from him, and had used it for a number of years, and then I started getting requests for recordings of it, and I asked Bob if I could record it, and he graciously gave me permission. Some ways I wish I would have charged $1 for it, because it's had over 107,000 downloads that I know of. Yeah. And people share it all the time, so who knows how many it's actually had. But that's one of the primary recordings, and then other relaxation recordings that I have. I'll leave those with people. With dementia, I've never ever talked. I was thinking about this the other day, and I've never ever given suggestions about memory recall or you'll remember better. It's just always been about relaxation and feeling comfort and ease in the body and in the mind, and that's been the whole focus.
Yeah. Which I can imagine by increasing that quality of life, by increasing that enjoyment of life, that perhaps, I think is the best we can say, perhaps those symptoms are slowing down, or at least the quality of life is absolutely improving.
Exactly, yeah. There was, this came up in ICBCH conversation on Facebook the other day, where I had posted, the study from Dr. Dan Nightingale, and somebody asked why after 9 months did the improvements disappear. And well, the study lasted 9 months. Dr. Dan worked with the people during that period, and after that, they no longer had hypnosis, and there were no recordings for them to listen to, and in the follow-up studies, the improvements had disappeared. So as long as, it appears that as long as people are getting that relaxation, the improvement continues and is lasting.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I know you've got a training coming up about this at HypnoThoughts, correct?
Yes, it's the Monday after HypnoThoughts. It's a full-day training, and it's going to be about how to work with people who have dementia and Alzheimer's, and we're going to, talk somewhat about what Alzheimer's is and dementia and the differences, and but also how to work with people with dementia and Alzheimer's, and also their family members or caregivers, and how to provide that hypnosis support and stress reduction support for caregivers.
Which I love that so far the through line has been a lot of the same themes that we work with this category. That's a lot of working with those cancer patients. That's a lot of, in addition to the nutrition, a lot of getting someone to the right mindset where now the weight loss is actually happening, and how much all of this overlaps in a beautiful way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I will, with somebody had a client in on Thursday with CRPS, chronic regional pain syndrome, and got him. Well, first I let him talk about his pain for a little bit, and I never, I maybe 10 minutes max, just long enough for me to get the gist of the story and what it is they're going through and the background on it, and then I cut him off. I go, okay, I know you know your story and you have it memorized, and I really don't need to know it, and I don't want you fired by those same neurons anymore. So know more about your story, and I have them start talking about the most happiest, joyful time in their life, and he started talking about when he first, or about when it was at their wedding, he and his husband's wedding, and dancing at their wedding, and the people were there, and the party, and the whole guy was glowing. And I said, stop. I said, tell me about your level of comfort. Now, when he came in the door, his level of discomfort was a 9. And then when we switched it around, his level of comfort was at a 1. And at that point, when he was talking about dancing at the wedding with his husband, his level of comfort was a 10. And I said, okay, so now do you see how you just did that and how quickly you did that? That's what's possible. And we want to make that lasting and long-term, and you learn how to do this on your own. And so back to the dementia, I wouldn't necessarily go about it that way, but I would get as much as I can, either through pictures or any stories, any way of triggering memories. Often it's asking people to put on favorite music.
Yeah.
What music does this person love and enjoy? And that will take them back to a time of when they're happy and joyful. And a man recently, what I did with him, he was, it was like the late 50s, the good, fun rock and roll stuff and the blues, and he was just swaying and giggling, and I took his left hand and I put it on his chest and just had him hold his hand there. And he could just feel his whole body soften and relax. And I told the son that was with him, I said, just, you came in with him and you know how tense he was. And I had his son put his hand there and hold his hand. And I said, notice the difference in his body. And his son was just blown away by the change, by those simple little techniques.
So I'm curious to hear your theory on this, because I've taught that strategy at times to others about just getting them to run that mental pattern once again, remember what that feeling once was, whether it's movement, whether it's dance. Here's someone I'm just working with recently that had gone through throat cancer, and having him tell the story of what it was like when he was singing was exciting everything again, bringing back the comfort, bringing back the excitement.
Wellness.
Yeah, which I always get this question from students, and I have my stock answer. I'm sure yours may be better, which is, wouldn't that depress them? Wouldn't that remind them what they can't do anymore?
I've never, ever had that happen.
Exactly, yeah. That's my answer, too.
Yeah, no.
Why do you think that?
Well, it's all memory, know, and we have a choice of our memories. And we can either, I think, remember how much we hurt and suffer, or we can, and I often will point out to them, look, you're sitting here in my office, and, you're not dancing. And you can either focus on that you can't dance, or you can focus on remembering that what it was like to dance. Either way, it's your memory, it's your imagination. You can be driving down the road and stuck on the freeway in traffic and be late for a meeting and stress out and freak out and be all upset and show up late for your meeting stressed. Or you can sit back, relax, enjoy the time of sitting still, and show up late for your meeting relaxed. Either way, you're going to be late. Mm-hmm. And so here you have a choice. You want to be stressed about it or relaxed about it? Here in my office, you have a choice. Do you want to be remembering the happy times and the good times, or do you want to be sad and depressed? And most people consciously will choose the joy and the happiness, but I also point out to them that often their body is addicted to the chemicals of depression and anxiety, and it's going to feel wonky and weird. There's going to be that period of withdrawal, but I'm supposed to be depressed now, or I'm supposed to be anxious now, and make that okay too, that they have that wonkiness. It's okay to feel weird about feeling good.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. So we'll link over in the show notes at worksmarthypnosis.com over to your websites, as well as the upcoming training that's happening post-conference at HypnoThoughts Live. Any final thoughts to share with the listeners out there?
I would just encourage people to be open to the possibilities of what hypnosis can do for people. And actually bigger than that, what people can do for themselves using hypnosis. And if when I hear other hypnotherapists talk, or particularly new folks, and or see their posts, the biggest thing is they need to get out of their own way and let go of their fear and relax and go have fun, go play. And allow, teach people skills and allow them to do the work.
Jason Lynette here once again, and as always, thank you so much for interacting with this program, for sharing your reviews online and putting it up on your social media streams. And I will wait to the 50-minute mark or so, as I'm assuming, to now point out that I failed to not mention the James Bond references here, as Roger Moore also played James Bond, but that was a different Roger Moore. For this Roger Moore, once again, head over to the show notes at worksmarthypnosis.com to see the details of his websites as well as the post-convention offering at HypnoThoughts Live 2019. Plus, stick around for another 2 days for Neurolinguistic Business. Get all the details at worksmarthypnosis.com/NLP Biz. Apply the principles of neurolinguistic programming, NLP, to your business to communicate better with business clients, as well as inspire them to take action with your services. Check that out. See you in Vegas.
Thanks for listening to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast at worksmarthypnosis.com.
Hey there, it's Jason, and I want you to be one of the first to find out as we upload amazing new content. So do this right now. Click the subscribe button right here on this video. That's going to link you to our YouTube channel here, and you will be the first to find out as new resources and downloads are made available. Do it now.